The Subcommittee on Ways and Means will now come to order. This is the June 17th meeting. Will all please rise and salute the flag? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Roll call of the members of the Ways and Means Subcommittee. Councilor Janino?
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna?
Here.
Here. Councilor Morabito is absent. Councilor Patch is absent. Councilor Zambuto?
Here.
Here. Councilor Guanasso?
Here.
Here. And Chairman Rizzo?
Here.
Here. Quorum is present.
The first item is calendar item 19-091. It's a loan order in the amount of $6,700,000 for Phase 10 construction, project number 4487. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this $6.7 million loan order? This is a public hearing, correct? It's a public hearing? We already had the public hearing, okay. I'm just looking at the communication. Okay. Dawn, go ahead. This is regarding pump station and drainage improvements.
So I'm a proponent for this project. Pretty much all the projects that we do as far as enhancing the drainage and the handling of the sewage in our city is extremely important for the health and well-being of the citizens of the city of Revere. So as everybody's pretty much aware of the problems, the ongoing problems down in the Henry Street, the Dolphin Ave, Jones Road area, this is a badly needed project and well thought out and well planned. We all, the engineering department and the water sewer drain department had a hand in the actual design and the all the dialogue in as far as what is needed down there. And so we wholeheartedly are for this project. And I can't say enough of it, so I really would like it to move forward.
John, thank you very much. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donnie, as you probably know, Jackson Street, that pump down there is totally inadequate, as is the one down the end of Dunn Road. We've been down there together, and I know that has to be repaired, probably even replaced. Is there any money in this loan order to address that?
So there, actually there isn't, but Dunn Road has actually been running very well since we put it back into service. We periodically check it probably about once a week. It's on our route of our inspection, our weekly inspection of drain stations and sanitary stations. And as you well know, we haven't had any problems since we've gotten that pump station back online, since it's been out of service probably close to probably maybe 10 years. So.
And I know that you had mentioned there were some problems, potential problems with the wiring down there.
Yeah, so there is some minor upgrades we could do, but for the most part, we got it back into service with minimal costs. Pretty much, we got it back into service with just the labor from the water sewer drain division. That was just clearing this a check valve that was set in Dunn Road, and that was just labor. That was just actually opening up the manholes and clearing the tennis balls, the hula hoops, the plastic bottles that have been in there for, quite some time.
And I know we did the one on Rice Avenue. We rebuilt one of those pumps down there. And what are we going to be doing with the second pump?
So that second pump, we have to put it out because it exceeds the amount for rendering services. That project has to be, a scope of work has to be written up and it has to be sent out. Presently though, both pumps in that pump station are running, so it would only be a P&M service to the pump. But because the pump is so large, they're about 35 feet long, and it needs to be transported to Kansas City to be serviced by Fairbanks Morse, the only company that can service that pump because it's a Fairbanks Morse pump. So it can only go one place. Because it is working right now, it's just solely a P&M item that we would be sending it out to. And because we're coming into hurricane season, I prefer not to pull it just yet. Like I said, it is running. Well, it's looked in on, we grease it, we P&M it. We just do the basics that we can do for that pump. We are limited because of the size of it.
Well, thank you very much, and I'll defer to your capable hands.
Thank you. Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you. Any other councilors have any questions? Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say thank you, always, for everything that you do in my ward. We had flooding, we had a forum, and I was told that we had flooding down on Wilson, Vinyl, Taft Street. And I know I asked you to just clear the sewer, but you went down in the sewer and took 14 yards of debris out. And now they don't have any more flooding. So I just want to thank you. I think you're a great asset to this city. And I thank you for all the work that you do for me. I call you and you take my calls right away. You come down, you look at the problems. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McKenna, but I'd like to reach out to my guys, really the reason why I've succeeded, because they're the ones who do answer my calls. They're the ones that do go the extra mile for me, and they do work tirelessly for the problems. They're a happy bunch, very happy bunch, and yeah.
I just want to also say that, just one more thing. Christmas Eve, I was in Florida, and I got a call that someone had a sewer break in their house, and they had all their family from California. And all your guys, you had a skeleton crew on, and all your guys came out, and they fixed the sewer. So I just want to say thank you. I know I say thank you to you, but I want to say thank you to your department, too, because they're all great guys.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing us. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is obviously nothing to do with this loan order, but Donnie, publicly I'd like to thank you for the efforts going on down at the end of Douglas and Temple Street. You've received some criticism that's unjustified based on the fact that a program has been worked out between yourself and I. We understand what's going to go on there, and I appreciate that once and for all we're going to do it the right way. Right. That little abbreviated cut through that you made gave a little bit of relief just so the water could be relieved temporarily. This is not a permanent fix. This is something that you're going to do a great job with. And once and for all, the people that traverse Hastings Street and down Temple and Douglas will finally get something that's presentable in that area. So I appreciate your efforts that you're doing there, and I don't think you intruded upon the DEP or anybody else. You did what you said you were going to do. I agree with you. I told anybody who inquired with me as to what was going to take place July 1st. We're waiting for the budget. Then we'll do the job right. And I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Councilor Guanasso. I've also, I did take a little heat from that. I talked to Conservation Committee, and I just put them on notice that that road does need to be reworked. We'll take whatever steps it does to, petition to the Conservation Committee or DEP to do the work necessary to reinstate that road that is in a complete mess. Been totally submerged in the water for, countless years. And, roads can't be submerged underwater like that. There is no real drainage down there, and it does need to be addressed for a permanent solution.
Well, the law-abiding citizens of the area really thank you, and I appreciate your efforts, you and your workforce.
Again,
thank you.
Again, my guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say, in all the years I've been up here, I don't think I've ever seen this kind of praise given to you and your men. So I think sorry about that. I thought we shut all the phones off. That was one that wasn't shut off. It's obvious that what you're doing, and I don't want to single you out. You're doing a great job in your position, but the men you have around you are obviously, need the praise too, and they deserve it. Like I said, I've been here many years, never seen this much praise given on a group of men. So you're to be congratulated for the work you've done and you continue to do.
Some are here, and I hope the rest who don't have the opportunity to be here are watching, because they need the pat on the back too. You know?
Yeah, and you can thank them publicly for all of us, because we're truly grateful.
Thank you very much. Thank you much, Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Any other counselors wishing to be heard? Well, first let me say, you guys do an excellent job, and we know they work oftentimes under very difficult circumstances, but I also want to give the water and sewer ratepayers a pat on the back, because we've spent so far, it looks like almost $100 million in upgrades since signing on to this consent decree with the Department of Justice, and I'm not sure where the end in sight is. We had talked at one of our last budget meetings about where we were with respect to the consent decree, and from what I'm told, Nick had mentioned that, we had an agreement, I guess, in theory, but nothing concrete, and was wondering if that was going to be forthcoming, or is that just going to be a rolling gentleman's agreement that we don't, because the goal here right along, as far as I'm concerned, has been to not have to spend as much money as we have been, so that hopefully can start to give some relief to the ratepayers. And, otherwise, why spread out the terms of the consent decree? We may as well leave it as it is. So if we have some sort of a reasonable expectation that the terms will be changed at some point, then maybe we can start to discuss going forward, lowering these amounts of money. Like, you can see what's being, asked for and proposed tonight that the city council is expected to vote on. And of course, every vote we make has a direct impact on the ratepayers. So maybe if you could just kind of bring us up to speed where we're at with some formal agreement, and what maybe our expectations as people who have to approve these loan orders, what we can expect, that would be helpful for me anyway.
Yeah, I'd like to, Bob Button, please, he can really just elaborate on the loan issues.
Thank you, Tony. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Button, CDM Smith, 75 State Street. Thank you for having me here. I handed out 4 pieces of information, Counselor, that came out of your request at the public hearing. And one of those pieces of information was a copy of the progress report that we just submitted to EPA in May of this year. And what this did was document over 10 years worth of compliance work that the city's been doing. Maybe it should share over there.
Okay. No, that's okay. Thank you.
So that document provides a summary of all the work that's been done. It's a 300-page report. This is an actual copy of the report that I brought with me. We've slimmed it down and included the highlights section for you. So we provided that information. What we did is we made a presentation to the federal government, and I know, as Nick had said, with the government shutdown and some delays, it's taken a little bit to get responses back, but we've proposed a schedule of doing the consent decree work in 5-year increments, and then providing a summary report at the end of that period that documents the work that's been done and the success that we've had in eliminating SSOs, eliminating sewage in people's houses, eliminating illicit discharge. So that proposal is in front of the government. The attorneys working for the city have made a presentation and a proposal to the Department of Justice. Several of the folks in the room, department heads, have been involved in that process. This report went in order to demonstrate that the city has, in fact, lived up to the terms of the consent decree and can show measurable progress, which, after 10 years of working with the city, I know firsthand that we can show quite a bit of progress around the city. We did put a quick presentation together. I noticed some of you are looking at it, that documents some of the work, that shows the hundreds of thousands of gallons of daily flow that aren't going into the MWRA meters and running up the bills for the city. So there's quite a bit of information in there. In the interest of time, I think we can table that unless there are any questions, but we tried to provide you with that information so that you'd be able to see that we're working to reduce the costs. The borrowing this year is less than half of what it was, I believe, 3 years ago. We were up over 18 million. It's below that, well below that this year. And we're on the downward trend in terms of the annual spending. Every year, the city, whether you're in a consent decree or not, has to spend money to operate and maintain their water and sewer system, to fix pumps, to pay the guys, to buy the new equipment, to do all the great work that you were just talking about. So the cost will never go away. The good news now is that with all the pump stations being replaced, all 13 of the wastewater stations and 3 of the drainage stations have been upgraded, they've been alarmed. There's just a lot more efficient operation of the system. The guys have new equipment. Hopefully soon they'll have a new facility. And in the presentation, you can actually see some pictures of the guys out there with the new equipment that the council has approved, doing the jobs that you were just thanking them for doing before. So I think we're in a very positive light. We don't have nearly the amount of issues that we had in 07, 08 when we were having major problems and failures. We've done projects to try to make sure that you won't have major failures. We did a job last year with a local business, actually, to line critical crossings underneath highways, underneath railroad tracks, underneath major arteries where there would be a significant problem if we had a failure. We fixed that. So we've made tremendous strides in the city, and I think the city should be proud of what's been fixed and now how the guys in the department are operating and running it all.
Okay, with that, does anybody have any questions? The only question I have, and I'm not sure if this is a function just of the MWRA, because as we look at our budget, our FY20 budget, the assessments from the MWRA continuously go up. So it seems like I'm just kind of, I was a little hopeful that as we start to clear, do our part to clean up, what we need to as a community, that somehow those numbers would be reflected in what the assessments are.
And if I may, Counselor, because that's a great point, I can, Ashley, this went to sleep on me. So one of the things that happens with the assessments from the MWRA is that there's a certain fixed cost to run the MWRA, and that cost is divided up by all the cities and towns, and it's based, that are part of the MWRA system, and it's based on a lot of different factors, but a large part of it is your average flow, the average daily flow that goes into the system. So by reducing the average daily flow by the hundreds of thousands of gallons that we have that show up in the MWRA data that's in the system, what's happened is your MWRA assessment didn't go up even more because you were letting all that, those hundreds of thousands, millions of gallons of water that shouldn't be in the system go in. So what you're seeing is your authority costs don't go up as much as they would have if you had all that extra flow in the system. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, and I want to flip to this slide real quick. When you look at other neighboring communities, one of the things, so if you will, when you look at this slide here that's now up on the screen and whatnot for folks at home, it's the benefits of the work to date. Back in 2010, when you look at the wastewater in the city, almost 32% of the wastewater that went through the MWRA meters was from leaky pipes. And almost 20%, 18.2, 20%, was from inflow, sump pumps, catch basins that were collecting water that shouldn't be in the sewer systems. When you get out to 2016, which is the latest data that the authority has available, you can see that the infiltration has gone down to 28%. So we've had a very significant drop in infiltration. That's from lining the pipes that you've all seen happening in your neighborhoods. And then we've seen a significant drop as well, almost half, in the inflow. And that's from the sump pump redirects. That's from the amnesty program that you folks sponsored a few years back. So just from the authority's data, you can see a 20% change in the wastewater flow over about a 5 or 6 year period. And when we start to look at data through 2018, 2019, the more work that gets done, those numbers are just going to get better. So it's a long way of answering your question on the authority information, but by staying ahead of it, what's happening is your rates aren't going up as much as some of the neighboring communities. When you look at this particular slide here, we compared Revere to a combination of Malden, Melrose, and Everett, pretty similar size demographic local communities. And you can see that your daily flow has gone down 13% in 2016 versus that of your neighboring communities. So part of what we did is we compared all the work that's been done in Revere to your neighbors and said, wow, look at the reduction that we're seeing. So in addition to the positive things that you all see in your homes and your streets on a daily basis, the numbers from the MWRA and the numbers from the meters and the work that we've done in the city are backing up what people are experiencing, which isn't sewage running through their homes every time it rains. So I think there's a lot of good information in there if you understand, the data and what it's trying to tell you. And we've spent a lot of time trying to prepare it in such a way that the Department of Justice and EPA and DEP, the position the city was in when we first started the consent decree, where there were a lot of issues and a lot of moving parts, has really been tightened up by the performance of the city and the work that you've done, the good work that's been done.
Well, thank you very much for that explanation, Bob. If there's no further questions, if you'd like to put this to a vote, Madam Clerk?
This is on CWSRF project number 4487 in the amount of $6.7 million. Counselor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Morabito?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Patch is absent. Counselor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, this will be forwarded to the full City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Okay, next item is 19-092. It's a loan order in the amount of $1,500,000 for Phase 2 field investigations, planning project number 4532. Bob, did you want to speak to that while you're up there? or-
I could if that's okay.
Just give
Counselor?
for the edification of the council, what this $1.5 million is for, and
Sure. Bear with me, I'm just trying to, here we go. So every year, what we have to do is we have to go out and look at the city. So when we first started the consent decree work back in 2009, 2010, for 3 years, we did a triage. We looked at the whole city, and we looked at what areas are in worse shape than others, and we tried to prioritize all of our work throughout the consent decree based on that initial information. So we went in, we did flow metering, we did flow isolation, we did a lot of investigations that were a rough pass at the entire city. Then each year after those first 3, in accordance with what we've told the EPA and DEP we would do under the consent decree, we go back and look at smaller targeted areas in the city. We go and we look at every single home, we inspect the sewers, we look at the catch basins, we check for illicit discharge. In addition to taking sewage out of the sewer, or water out of the sewers that shouldn't be in there, we've also taken hundreds of thousands of gallons of sewage that was going into the drainage system where people had illegally connected their toilets and their sinks and their showers and their dishwashers into the drains, and those were running out into the county ditches and into the marsh and into the creeks around the city. So in addition to fixing the sewer system, we've also done a lot of work to deal with the water quality overall. And that requires us each year, in order to plan for next year's work, we have to do investigations this year. This year's investigations are next year's construction, and that's how we've leapfrogged through the process since the beginning of the consent decree. So this investigation work will allow us to then line up the construction projects that would happen in 2021, 2022 timeframe. In addition to that, as part of that 5-year plan that we were talking about earlier, where we've said to EPA and DEP, we'll do 5 years worth of work and we'll put meters in the sewer to evaluate what's going on. This money will help us put those meters in so that we can continue to demonstrate the type of progress that we've been showing over the last 9 or 10 years.
okay, any councilors have any questions for Bob? Bob, I just had one question. As
Absolutely.
you're doing your investigations and, coming up with an appropriate plan that's going to satisfy the terms of our consent decree, I'm assuming that we're factoring in, because of stormwater and, backup of sewer and drains, things like that, the city's efforts, whatever efforts are currently underway with respect to our resiliency plan. Are you factoring that in as well for the purposes of your numbers?
And it's also part of the, specific resiliency issues that are outside of the consent decree are not part of the numbers, but everything that we do within the consent decree is done with the intent of meeting the resiliency guidelines and setting your sewer system where we can up above the 100-year flood elevation, putting generators at the pump stations up out of the floodplain. So we're doing that type of work. We're working with the Water Sewer Drain Division now and with other consultants on the team to investigate the ditches and to characterize the sediment and to get that sediment out of there so that when we connect and fix all the drainage, it can actually get out to the ocean and get away from the neighborhood. So we are factoring all of that into the work that we're doing, Councilor.
Any other councilors have any questions for Bob? Madam Clerk, if you call the roll.
Sure, this is on CWSRF project number 4532 in the amount of $1.5 million. Counselor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Patch is absent. Counselor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, this loan order will be forwarded to the full city council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you all.
The next calendar item is calendar item number 19-122. It's a communication from the city auditor requesting an appropriation in the amount of $400,000 from free cash to be transferred to the Workers' Compensation Insurance Fund.
Good afternoon. Basically, the workers' compensation fund that we set up in fiscal year 19 had a $400,000 appropriation to begin, and there have been workers' comp claims that have come in throughout the year that have exhausted those funds. So basically, we're here before the council to ask for some additional funds to be put into that workers' compensation fund so we can pay the claims of the city and the school department's workers' compensation cases, and happy to answer any questions that I could on that.
Can you give us an historical, I don't know whether it's in the budget, we can talk about it later, or in historical perspective on the, we're funding this again, 400,000, am I correct in saying that? Did we fund it last year at 400,000, where you're asking for another 400,000 transfer, or?
Yeah, it used to be in the general fund as an appropriation. Last year, we created the fund so that any excess dollars would carry forward. Unfortunately, for this particular fiscal year, there was no funds to carry forward. In fact, that we've exhausted the appropriation from fiscal year 19, so.
And how does that compare to years prior? Do we have anywhere in the budget that gives us an historical perspective on that, or no?
Yeah, there should be some historical perspective in the detail. I didn't bring that up, but I can certainly try to get some more information on that. But as you know, workers' compensation cases, they're volatile. They could be a good year or a bad year. So part of the reason to set up that fund is so that we can try to budget for that and have some carry forward if we have a good year, as opposed to try to guess every year how much we'd be spending on that account.
Okay, any other councilors have any questions for Richard Biscay? Any other councilors have any questions? Well, obviously, we have to pay the claims. You haven't deemed them unwarranted, so we've got to fund it, and based on your communication, it looks like you've identified the funds. So with that, Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll.
All right, so this is on a transfer in the amount of $400,000 from free cash to the Workers' Compensation Insurance Fund. Counselor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Patch is absent. Counselor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, this will be forwarded to the full city council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next communication is calendar item number 19-127. It's a communication from the city auditor requesting approval of revolving funds for FY20 in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53E and a half. Mr.
Thank you.
Biscay? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you recall, last year, the Municipal Modernization Act required that cities and towns actually ordain their revolving funds. So last year, there was a vote to create all the departmental revolving funds in the city, and attached to those were budgets for fiscal year 2019. And according to the law, we're required to come before the city council to set up the budget for those revenues in fiscal year 2020. A revolving fund basically is a departmental fund where revenues that come in are dedicated for specific use. And before you are all the appropriation revolving funds that were established last year. And basically, we're just looking to establish those budgets for fiscal year 2020, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do any councilors have any questions? This is, no councilors, just on the maximum annual expenditures, just trying to figure some of this out, like the holiday celebration accounts, 150,000. Would that be for, would fall into that
That's
category?
like
Is that
your,
Christmas time, or?
That's the parade that you have for Columbus Day and some of the 4th
Okay.
of July celebration and such. And just so
Okay.
everyone's clear, we can't spend any money that isn't available. So when you set that maximum allowable expense, there could be no funds expended if the revenues aren't there. So that's just basically setting a cap. Revenues have to be there to expend that dollar, so no one can deficit spend in these accounts.
Okay, so the revolving fund for the Recreation Department, I see $300,000. So the city council is not to be led to believe that there's $300,000 in that account? That's just a maximum that you're setting?
Well, basically, the revenues that they collect for all their programs that goes into that account, and those funds are paid for those, the umpires, the
Right.
facilities, et cetera, exactly. So that's not the fund balance, that's just
So
setting.
that's just the maximum expenditures that they can make, is that?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to be sure of that. Okay, if councilors don't have any further questions, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll on this?
Sure, on the revolving fund schedule for FY 2020, Counselor Genino.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Morbido.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Patch is absent. Counselor Zambudo.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes, and Chairman Rizzo.
Yes.
Yes, this will be forwarded to the full city council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Calendar item 19-128, a communication from the Director of Finance requesting an appropriation in the amount of $2 million from the Water Sewer Free Cash to the Water Sewer Enterprise Fund.
Good afternoon. At this time, I am requesting the transfer of $2 million from the, as you read, from the Free Cash Enterprise Fund to the Free Cash Fund in order to lower or not increase as much the rate for the water and sewer rate for the ratepayers in the city. In actuality, what it will do is, since that communication, water and sewer rate has been calculated, and what it will mean a deduction in the cost of water and sewer for the residential homeowner in the amount of 1.81%, and the commercial will be 0.27% reduction. So with that, if I recommend highly to make this transfer, approve this transfer in order that the ratepayers can see a reduction in their water and sewer rate.
Any questions? Councilor Powers?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George, this would be an additional decrease with people that have the outside meters. That's something that they're going to get anyway?
They get that anyway.
So this
That's
would be an
something-
additional decrease, am I correct?
Well, what it is, they don't relate. They relate this way. Their water and sewer rate is based on what they do. Their deduct meters, we call them, and their
Yeah.
outside meters. That's based on their usage and how much goes through it, and this won't affect that at all. The only way it will affect it is that, the only way I can see that it would affect it is that the deduction would be part of what they.
So
less than
people
what
that use the
deduct-
outside meters would benefit from both, am I correct?
Well, they benefit from both. You can
Thank
say
you.
that. It's a
Thank
way
you.
of saying it.
Any other councilors? I don't have any questions. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Or on the water and sewer free cash transfer, Counselor Genino.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor McKenna.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Morbido.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Patch is absent. Counselor Zambudo.
Yes.
Yes, Counselor Guanasso.
Yes.
Yes, and Chairman Rizzo.
Yes.
Yes, this will be forwarded to the full city council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you.
The last calendar item is calendar item number 19-129, a communication from the mayor relative to the city's FY 2020 operating budget. So, just for the edification of my colleagues that are here that haven't participated in these hearings, we conducted a series of budget hearings with each department head. I want to thank the department heads for their cooperation and their participation in helping us get through it. We heard out each department head and went through all of their various expenses. They were able to answer questions that the council had. And at this point in time, what I think, I'd like to do is to ask members first of the committee and other members of the city council if they have any recommended cuts in the budget. As we all know, we cannot add to the budget despite maybe some things that we'd like to see. We do not have the ability to add to the budget. We only have the ability to cut. This budget in total shows that the city must raise $217,053,143. And we can either take each individual department. I don't know if that's the appetite of the council, or if councilors just want to propose any cuts from where they're at. I can go down, right down the line, and see if there's anything that councilors would like to see cut or have any comments on the budget that they may want to talk about. That might go quicker if I go that way instead of keep bouncing back and forth. So what I'll do is I'll start to my right as we typically do. Councilor Janino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start by thanking you and the committee for, attending the hearings and for holding hearings as professionally and as effectively as we did. So that's kudos to you and to the committee. I also want to thank the department heads for taking time to be here. It's one time a year when everyone's called before us and we get a lot done and we move through a lot of information in a short period of time. And I know that you come in at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning and you're here with us till 8 o'clock at night, so we appreciate that. It was a very lean budget, and the few things that were added I think are very necessary improvements to our city. So I do not have any cuts to recommend, but I just want to thank everyone that was a part of this process.
Thank you, Councilor Janino. Councilor Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Much like Councilor Janino, in reviewing, I do appreciate the work that you put in this week and the last week with fellow councilors on the Ways and Means Subcommittee, as well as the directors of each department to come and speak for their department. Many times explaining to the residents on the TV of what they do and what their department handles on a yearly basis. Knowing that a majority of the increases are modest, probably much more modest than surrounding communities. The majority of the increases are typical. They're healthcare related, they're pension related, they're obviously public safety, school, and DPW related, and those are what I think are modest increases. And I would not be in favor of any cuts in any of the areas. And I think that with the current revenue, we're in good financial standing, so I would be in favor of this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for everyone that attended, all the department heads and the committee. I believe that the additions are needed in the city and will just benefit for the services in Revere. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Morabito.
Thank you. Each one of you, all you department heads, work in departments that are very difficult. And you guys have the most difficult jobs because you get the brunt of everything. When there's an issue that is brought to our attention, we come to you. And I have to say, personally, I'm pleased with each and every department head here. You guys take the brunt of everything. You're the team leader, and your team is great, but you take the brunt of everything. It all comes down to you. I'm very pleased with each and every one of you. You guys have a difficult role of servicing the people of Revere, and it's very demanding. And with that said, you guys handle yourself professionally throughout the year, and I thank you, because you are a reflection of who we are as a city. So thank you. And In terms of the budget, I think it's fiscally responsible. It's very lean. Economically, we stand strong as a city. And I do not see anywhere we can cut, and I would not be opposed to voting in favor of the budget as is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, a lot's been said prior to me speaking, and I tend to agree with everybody. And, you know, I just want to congratulate again all the department heads and all of the workers that work for them. And they've been doing a great job. This is the best year we've seen for production of sidewalks, sewer work, catch basin work, Parks and Recreation Department. Everything is just awesome. But we're lucky that we have the funds to do it. You know, we're getting plenty of free cash. We're getting plenty of I&I money from the construction that's being done in the city, the mitigation funds that are being done on the special permit folks. And, you know, I just want to congratulate everybody and our mayor, and I know everybody wants more. We always want more. And I know we can always give more to Public Works and our police department and ISD. You know, we can always use more folks to help it out, but that will come. Give us a little time, and we'll make everything right. Not going to be 100%. Nothing's 100%. But we'll do better as we go along. And thanks to everybody, and I will vote for this the way it is in front of me. So thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. Council President Guanasso.
Mr. Chairman, I made a good selection in making you chair of Ways and Means. You certainly did a great job in serving the community. And to the folks outside here, we work day in, day. Each day we work with you, and each day we get your response. And each day I come back saying, wow, what cooperation we're getting from the workforce who is within our community. It's a reflection of teamwork. You can't run this city by yourself. You can't do anything by yourself. If we don't get the teamwork, if we don't get the funds from the state, if we don't get the funds from the taxes, everything's working in a very positive vein. And for the people power and the efforts that you put forward in your jobs, each and every one of you show professionalism. You do it with class. And certainly there are a few other tasks that we have yet to do. The remainder of this year, we're going to complete them, we're going to do them. And it's with your cooperation, with your hard work and effort, it's going to make our city much better. And again, I attended every Ways and Means Committee with the exception of one. And I saw people coming up and making their presentations. And what you've done is you know your budget, you know what you have to expend, and you know your workforce. And so that's a compliment to you as department heads to know what's going on right within your own department. And so your leadership has brought us to this level, and I thank you very, very much for your service to our community. And Mr. Chairman, again, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Councilor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the first thing that people, our constituents, need to understand is that the greatest part of that budget is for personnel. People out on the street, whether it's public safety, school department, whatever it might be. And we're mandated through educational reform to give the school department a certain amount of money every year. And that's something you can't cut. For the past couple of years, we've been putting extra money into Chapter 90 to get streets and sidewalks done throughout the city, and we are doing that. I know in my ward, I'm thrilled to see some of the work that they're doing out there on streets and sidewalks. It's amazing, and we're going to do more, a lot more. And, you know, we heard tonight, we heard about the great job that the DPW is doing down there, and they are doing a great job. There's no question about it. But they're doing that job because we're giving them the equipment and the personnel to make everything work a little faster and a little better for the city. I don't see any money that can be cut out of this budget. I mean, I chaired the Ways and Means Committee several times, and it's a very difficult thing. If you're cutting money out of this budget, you're cutting things out that need to be done. and that will have to be done later. It's like a drainage system and a water system. We're spending money now on a consent decree because that's money we should have spent a long time ago, taking care of those issues, whether it's drainage, sewerage, pumps, whatever it might be. So I honestly, in good conscience, cannot see any cuts in this budget that need to be made. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Zambudo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to congratulate you on the job you did running these budget meetings. And, you know, we're talking about this almost $218 million budget. And when I started running for office, the budget was $50 million. So that ought to tell you something about what's happened and how old I am. Yeah. That ought to tell you. No, what it tells you is that I get to see the growth of this city and how we've soared over the years that I've been in this council. And I'm proud to be a member of this council, and especially proud when we go through an exercise like this. We had all these great department heads come up here, and what it really was this year was an informational meeting. We got to talk to all the department heads and hear about all the good, in some cases, a lot of cases, the new things we're doing, and the technology has changed so drastically. And, you know, this city is run a lot more efficiently nowadays. Part of it is because I've been here a lot of years, but the better part is that, you know, people are working really hard, and we truly appreciate all you do for us. I remember, I go back far enough to remember when these meetings used to be contentious, and it used to be people getting beat up here when they come up to explain why they need another $50,000 in their budget, and that didn't happen at all, and it was very little grandstanding this year, and it's an election year, and you have to have some history to understand what it could be like, and it wasn't like that, and it's heartwarming, it really is, and you know, some of the people out there, some of the constituents might say, geez, you got a $218 million budget and you're not cutting anything. Well, it's because it's an efficient budget and it's being used, and we heard all the accolades to the Water and Sewer Department and all the good things that are happening today in this city that didn't used to happen, and we've come so far that we don't have those SSOs or whatever you call them coming out of we don't have sewage coming out of the catch basins anymore, and you know, we've truly come a long way, and I don't know, there's just a lot of good to say about this, and the bottom line is I don't have any cuts, but you know, there used to be a time when we'd cut insurances and they'd be put back in later, and you know, and that was just for effect, and we don't do that today. We're honest, and we're honest with the constituents, and we tell them what's what. And yes, it's a lot of money, and the taxes are very high in the city of Revere, but it's not being wasted, I can guarantee you that. A lot of good things are happening in this city, and I'm proud to serve it, and I'm proud to be on this committee. And again, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your hard work. And I want to thank all the department heads for all the great information that we got during these proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor. Any other councilors have anything? I have several questions. I don't know who would be prepared to answer it, if Richard Viscay or George Anzoni. I'd just like to ask some questions here for some clarification. And
Mr. Chairman, can I apologize, but I left out one thing I wanted to say, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I wanted to thank the city auditor for coming up here and being here for all the meetings and explaining any of the details that needed to be explained. I think it was a nice effect, and it really it was educational and helpful to me, and I'm sure to my colleagues. So again, thank you to the city auditor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that leeway.
no problem. If I don't know, somebody could help me out with a couple of questions here.
Happy to try to answer any questions you have.
Okay. So in section 4, page 5, Do you have the budget in front of you?
I'll grab one second.
Section 4, page 5?
Water Sewer Enterprise Fund?
Yes.
Yes, sure.
Just a question for some clarification here. It looks like we budgeted in FY19 under our bonded debt $2.63 million, 2.634, and this year it looks like they're proposing 3.656, an increase of about $1 million there. Can you explain why? I mean, if we look at 18, it was 2.6. It went up slightly in FY19, and then it jumped way up in 2020.
I mean, the numbers that are budgeted are exactly what the debt service payments are going to be. I know that there's, and George may be better suited to speak of the history of it, but in some cases, we had some temporary borrowings or bond anticipation notes, but eventually those capital projects have to come on the books with a full amortization schedule that pay both principal and interest. So that number is the number for fiscal year 20 on the actual debt. So there's no extra
No,
dollars in there.
I'm just curious why the huge increase. I mean, we've been doing in fact, Bob had alluded to the numbers coming down. So we've been doing work along the way. I'm just curious as to why
The finance
that
director
number
wants to
jumped
speak
up
to
by
this
$1
a little
million.
bit.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. The reason for that is, Council, is that the SRF loans are, what happens with the SRF loans, the city can't time when the SRF loans hit the books. It's when they finally gather everything up, we spend our money, and they gather it all up, and they say, okay, we're selling them, they sell the bonds, not us. So we can't say when the monies are going to be sold and the bond schedules are going to hit we don't have any say in that, when they're going to hit the city's books. There were a number of projects that were outstanding that had been approved by the city council, and what happened is the work had been completed and the SRF has decided to sell the bonds, and that's why that amount was. It could be loan issues that were a couple of years old, which they probably were. It's the eventuality that they do hit the city's books, so to speak, or their bond schedules, and that's what happened in this case, and that's why that is like that. It's not a, yeah, go ahead.
No, it just seems like an extraordinarily high increase, you know, as it's, you know, we don't have another historical perspective going back to 2016, 2017, but it just seemed,
Well, again, it's bond issues that were, you know, they could have been authorized in years past, you know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And then all of a sudden the SRF, their work has been completed. They usually don't sell the bonds unless the work has been completed and we've sent our numbers in. And then they pile it up with their batches. They batch it on their own on what they're going to sell. And they pick the different cities and towns that they're making a loan to. We've had and on top of this, we've had some principal forgiveness over the years, which, again, the city received from the SRF. So with that, I mean, the amount is a larger amount than past years. However, it's not any fault of the cities. It is the way the system works, and that's the way the SRF loans would work, because they batch up the loans and they decide when they're going to sell them. Where in the city is, we authorize it and we make a decision that we're going to sell it for the non-water and sewer bonding that we do, which gives us a different perspective because we can plan better on how they actually can hit our records and actually hit our budget.
okay.
Okay?
My next question has to do, we're still in section 4, page 13 on the capital outlay.
Okay.
Maybe someone can help me with that. There was an increase there in a little over $100,000. I'm just wondering what that extra $100,000 was for?
Page 13?
Yeah, section 4, page 13.
Okay, I'm one page off. Are you talking about the solid waste recycling enterprise?
This, yeah, the Solid Waste Recycling Enterprise Fund, it's under capital outlay, yeah, capital outlay.
Go ahead, Rich. That's not to do with bonding, though.
Thank you. Yeah, capital outlay for the barrels that we leased, we have a 3-year lease on those barrels since we started in the middle of the fiscal year. This actually accounts for the 12 months of
So those are for the
payments.
barrels?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Under section 5, page 2, that would be under revenue detail. I'm just, you know, with respect to our estimated local receipts, our FY19 estimated local receipts general fund, it just shows investment income at 3%. And now in 2020, it's projecting a 6%. You know,
Yeah.
that it would, our investment income will make up 6% of our local receipts. Like,
Yeah,
how's that jump? Go from
Interest
3%?
rates in general have gone up, and I know the treasurer's been moving some of that money into the MMDT, which is the money market account, and those rates have risen, and we've realized about $1 million in interest income. We have a lot of money on hand, so the more money we have on hand, the more interest we get on those dollars. So we're, well, I'm happy to say that we're above and beyond our estimate for fiscal year 19, almost 200% of what we estimated. So we're just estimating based upon the revenues on hand and the interest rate that we're receiving at the time.
Okay. Staying in section 5, page 7. This is just, maybe you can help me understand this just a little bit under hotel excise tax.
Sure.
So it looks like in 2015, the city received close to $1.8 million in hotel excise tax. And now in 2019, we're projecting less than that, 1.7 million. I mean, it seems, any reason we're in a strong economy? It seems as though the hotels are all doing great. We haven't lowered the amount of money that we're putting on our rooms tax, are we?
No, it's, again, the economy is doing well. I imagine more people are traveling. We get those hotel excise and mail excise on a quarterly basis reimbursed from the state, so they collect the money for us, and they send us a quarterly check similar to the cherry sheet money, and we're about at 1.7 million through 3 quarters. So, again, I think that the good economy is helping us realize some of these excise and meals taxes throughout the city.
So I think you're misunderstanding. Like, it looks like it's gone down from 2015. You're projecting 1.7 from almost 1.8. Like,
Honestly,
I don't totally understand why that would be in an economy like we have right now. And
well, the actual numbers from 2011 to 2018, those are actual numbers. 2019 is an estimated number. That was estimated conservatively, so any revenue that we collect over 1.7 million in fiscal year 19 will fall to the bottom line of free cash. So 2020 estimate is more based upon a realistic revenues coming in from hotel excise.
Okay.
Point of information?
Yes.
Could it be because there's more Airbnbs now? They're taken away from the hotel rooms? I'm just asking.
You know what, your guess would be as good as mine. That's why I'm asking the question. I don't really know why the revenue would have really gone down over a 4-year period or 5-year period, at least, you know, in the project. I'm not sure. Could be. I'm still not sure how many Airbnbs we have in the city.
I don't think any of this has to do with Airbnbs. It's just, I mean, you're talking about $80,000 between the 4 years. So, I mean, that's on 1.7 million. I don't think that's a huge delta. It seems pretty level. I will say that I do know that in fiscal year 19, we're having a very successful year collecting those hotel excise tax, and I imagine that the economy is helping drive that figure up.
Okay. Do you have a question, Counselor?
No,
Counselor Keith?
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo, Councilor Rizzo. I would just, so I think what Councilor Rizzo is getting at is the projection seems low for next year.
Well, we always try to project conservatively where we could, but again, it's $300,000 over last year, so there's a fine line between estimating too much and coming in with a revenue shortfall and trying to estimate realistically. Try to take 3-year averages typically, but again, we're at about 1.6 million through 9 months, and we get that revenue quarterly, so we'll see April, May, and June's revenue come in, and then I imagine that we're going to be over the $2 million mark for sure, and basically we estimate it based upon those figures.
Any other questions? Staying right in section 5, page 9, under fines and forfeits, any basis for why, it looks like our fines you're projecting them at really 50% higher than they were in 2016. Any particular reason for that?
We've increased our enforcement. We have 5 officers out there enforcing the parking rules and regulations, and I believe also last year the street cleaning fine went to $50, which was, I believe, $20. So the compounding effect of additional staff and increased fines have brought those figures up. Again, not being here in 2015 or so, I don't know what happened, but I know that we have 5 full-time parking control officers on staff right now.
Okay. Sorry that I have these questions. We slotted 2 hours here, so if councilors don't have questions,
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Councilor Powers.
I'll direct it to Mr. Visquet. I'm looking at the meals tax, and I'm looking at from 2015 up to, not projected, 2018. And I see an increase here of $125,000 in meals taxes. Am I looking at the right numbers?
That's 75,000.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, 50,000.
Yeah, and is that because of there's a 0.75% we collect on the meals tax increased at all?
It hasn't increased. It's been the same. It's, again, additional restaurants that open up and additional people going out. A better economy allows for more people to dine out, and we're realizing the benefits of those.
So you could attribute this to, a better economy and more people, more restaurants, people going into our restaurants?
Yeah, and any new restaurants that may have opened. But again, we get these revenues quarterly, so 3 quarters through the year, we're almost at our budget mark for 2019.
I see it's increased dramatically.
Yeah, we're doing really well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Powers. Okay, my next question was in section 1, page 22, pertaining to the overlay account. If you could just explain that to me here. It is projected cherry sheet assessment from the Commonwealth will increase 3%. Then other expenditures, you've got $1.2 million, a little over that. And then you go down to overlay, 750,000. I wasn't clear on what all those numbers meant. You were talking the balance in all prior years overlays about 1.25 million.
Yeah.
But then I see overlay 750,000, the expenditure 1.2. So maybe you could dissect that a little so I know exactly what it is we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So other expenditures, the total, the 1.220 number, that's the sum of overlay, cherry sheet offset, and the supplemental appropriation. So that's the total, and then the 3 figures below equal that $1.2 million. With regard to overlay, the Municipal Modernization Act has allowed us now to combine all prior year overlay into one account. So we have the benefit now in the city of all the prior overlay. We can combine that, and that balance is $1.2 million. So if we raise $750,000 on the recap, we'll have a total $2 million to apply to any abatements, exemptions, misvaluations, et cetera, during abatement time. So the 1.25 million is what we currently have on hand, And when we do the recap in December, we'll raise 750,000, give or take, and that'll give us a $2 million total overlay amount that we can use to fund abatements, veterans abatements, exemptions, et cetera.
So you have other expenditures, 1.220820. What is that?
That's the overlay of 750,000 plus the cherry sheet offset of 70,820 plus the supplemental appropriation 400,000. The sum of those three numbers, we categorize those as other expenditures.
Just, that stuff I can ask for later. So I know Councilor Zambudo had said earlier about making cuts in insurances and how that's just kind of semantics. You know, in some ways, particularly with the property and casualty, I would agree. Property and casualty, yes, because the bill is what the bill is. But we self-insure on our group health insurance, and those costs have just gone out of control as far as I can tell. And, you know, so what I looked at was the increase. I think it was about 8.5% or 9%, the increase in group health insurance, which I'm just not comfortable with. You know, the budget went up 5.6%. I mean, if we gave a 5.6% increase in the group, in the group health account, you know, that would still bring it up significantly. And, you know, I think it would make sense for us to look at a cut in that, you know, I just did some simple math, you know, you know, we could, because see, what happens is, and people don't realize this, you know, a lot of, you know, we have a lot of free cash at the end of the year, and I understand that this is an account that, you know, we self-fund, and sometimes we have a premium holiday where, you know, where experience is good, it's good for the employee, it's good for the city. But when we over budget and overcharge, I don't think we're doing anybody any real favors. We're certainly not doing the taxpayers any favors. They're the ones that are paying the bills, you know. And you know, you're talking about a $217 million budget. So this is not necessarily, sadly, it's not going to provide any tax relief for people per se. But it's going to be $600,000 that it will be money that we won't have to come up with to fund this overall budget. We can lower at least that number a little bit. You know, you look at, you know, the city of Malden's got 61,000 people. I don't think our last numbers are 61,000. Their proposed budget for this year is $179 million. A 1% increase this year they're proposing. We're proposing a 5.6. In the last 2 years alone, we've hired 80 new people. The last 2 years. I'm told that there's about 150 additional people into our retirement system during the last 4 years. I mean, that to me is alarming. I mean, we're playing catch-up with OPEB and with our pension liability, and we're adding these kind of numbers. I mean, I don't know. It just seems very out of line for me. And, you know, I didn't run for city council to come up here and, you know, not take a hard look at things. You know, that's just my nature. I've done that since the first day I served back in 2000. And what I'm seeing right now, to be quite honest with you, is very alarming to me. And I won't go on to all the reasons why I think some of it's happening and so on, but it's just, you know, this is the one time a year that we come up and we look after the taxpayers. We try to represent them and look at these numbers and say, you know, I mean, I understand everyone comes up all year long, additional appropriations. We need money for this. We need money for that. You know, and I respect the job that all of our departments do. They do great jobs. They do great work. But they got to do the job with 150 more employees over the last 4 years, 80 employees over the last 2 years. This year, there was, I think, well, strike that. But 80 positions in the last, in the last 2 years, 1176 to 1256. It just doesn't seem to me to make good fiscal sense for a city our size. Like I say, City of Malden, 61,000 people, a budget of 179 million. That's almost $40 million less than ours. I mean, what are they doing so much worse off than we are? Is Malden in that bad a shape? I don't know. But I'm just not comfortable with it. And rather than, I'm not going to go and talk about, we're going to cut, I'm not going to do that, but I am pretty adamant about cutting at least something that I know the city can survive with, and that's a $600,000 cut in group health. You want to have a premium holiday down the road if you can, have a premium holiday. I'm all for it. But, you know, I'm definitely in favor of that. Council doesn't want to go along with it. They want to just put their mark on it. That's fine. But I have to vote the way I want to, the way I have to vote, because as I peeled open every single page of this document over the last several weeks, and I look back to where we were and what was being spent and where we are now and what's being spent, it's unnecessary as far as I'm concerned. The city can run just fine the way Malden is at 179 million versus the 217 million that we're proposing. So I'm proposing a $600,000 cut, and I didn't hear any other cuts. So, you know, if there's no other cuts, I will ask the clerk to call the roll on that. I guess there's just going to be one offering of a cut.
Would you mind if I responded to any of those comments? Or?
You can respond, sure.
Okay. I know Finance Director wants to speak a little bit in detail more about the health insurance in general, but you asked you made a lot of points on that, so I just want to.
Sure.
How we compare to Malden is something that probably could be looked at and try to find out what the differences are. I mean, I think we're in much better shape than Malden, financially, et cetera, but that's a conversation we could have another day. As far as new employees go, this budget has a list of full-time equivalents that have been hired over the last 4 years. So certainly if you're pulling the numbers from that, those are the numbers. But you'll find that most of the employees that are added are either at the school department, in the public safety, or the Department of Public Works. With that, all those new people come with health insurance plans that drive that number up. Now, all I will say about the health insurance budget is that we take the premium rates that are given to us by our consultant, we times it by the number of employees that take health insurance times 12 months, and that's what the figure comes out to. What I think is a better indicator of how our health insurance trust is doing is looking at the balance in the actual trust account. The appropriation part is just us doing math on number of plans times the rate times 12 months. So I would just use caution in cutting that number, because most likely we will be before you to ask to add that back in. However, to your point, if we're having a good year in the health insurance trust, you'll see that balance go up because the employee share and the employer share go into the trust from which the bills are paid. So I think a better indication of how we're doing in the health insurance is not necessarily by the appropriation, but the balance in the trust account. And that's all. I just wanted to clear
Richard,
that up.
Point of information.
If we weren't self-insuring, and it was the bill we were getting from Blue Cross, I mean, of course I wouldn't cut it. We have to pay people's health benefits. We're self-insuring. I think that we're really overstretching here. And I know we've hired a lot, the city's hired a lot of people. I've said that and I keep saying it, but, you know,
Mr.
bottom
Chairman,
line.
point of information?
You have a point of information?
I do.
Yes, state your
Malden's
point.
budget, 177 million, was fiscal year 2019. Our 217 million is for fiscal year 2020.
Their proposal is a 1.1% increase for FY20. So it was 179 million in the city of Malden. It's a 1.1% increase. That's what they're proposing. So, but thank you for your point. I would like to propose the $600,000 cut
Budget?
for.
This is my budget, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
If I could speak on it. Again, I concur with the city auditor and how we somewhat come to the rates. This year, we have experienced 3 very large losses. The losses aren't something we can control. We had one loss of over $1 million, and it was and it's still going on. We just put out an RFP for a stop loss, and they lasered that one incident, all right? So meaning they wouldn't cover that incident because they felt it was so, it's going to be a continuing incident. And I'm trying to say this in a way that I'm not giving any information that's against the HIPAA laws, but that one incident is going to continue, and they are not going to pick the stop loss up on that for $1 million. And that's Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we're going to have to pay $1 million where everybody else is, you know, an incident is $200,000. We're going to have to pay $1 million before they're going to start picking that up in the stop loss. I would wholeheartedly recommend to this council, because of our incidences that we now have ongoing, and then there was another incident where they lasered it at $450,000, and another incident at $500 and some odd thousand. So we are having a number of incidences or cases where it's going down. They're asking us, both Blue Cross and Harvard, to put more money into our trust fund. They want us to increase the amount of the trust fund balance by $300,000 for Blue Cross Blue Shield and $100,000 for Harvard Community Health. They have come up to, they have sent those communications to me. I've passed them on to Cook & Company, who is our consultant, who does a number of cities and towns in Massachusetts, and they also recommended the same. So looking at all of this and what we're facing and what I know of the accounts, which I can't pass on, other than these blanket statements that I'm making, but I know the particulars. Because of the HIPAA rules, they can't be given out. Knowing all of that, I would recommend highly you don't cut that, Mr. Chairman. That's the one thing that you're dealing with people with.
I have a question for you,
Okay.
George. Can you go
Yes.
back? What's the reason that the stop loss isn't in play for that claim? What's the reason that they're not covering?
The claim is, so the reason why the stop loss is increased, because that's going to be an ongoing claim. It's such a,
I would imagine
difficult
those
case.
large losses are ongoing. They're not, they're
usually
not
a lot-
emergency room visits for $1 million.
No, they're not, but they are ongoing, but that's going to be a case where it's already cost us over $1 million. And it's only happened in September. So looking at that, when they put their rates out, as you know, when they look at their rates, they look at what their exposure is going to be. And the city's exposure on this particular case is very high. And looking at that and the other 2 cases that I'm mentioning, looking at those cases, you can see that, you know, what's happening is that your increased costs, and I said that at my budget hearing, your increased costs on health insurance is just going to go up. And we don't have we're not looking right now where we have a trust fund. We have to go in our trust fund based on, have to keep something at least 2.5 months of claims in our trust fund. We're just about that now. If we go any lower, the financial markets are going to say to us, you know, what are you doing? DOR is going to come out to us and say, wait a minute.
Do we have
what are you
available
doing?
free cash? Is there any free cash left?
There's free cash left.
Well, so why can't that fund it? Why does it have to go in the taxpayers' back?
If you'd rather take it out of free cash, but if you.
Yes, I'd rather,
again, that's a
personally, I
recommended-
would.
That has.
Unless you, you know, I don't recommend we keep, you know, it's even more alarming that we know these things are happening with respect to health insurance. You've got these stop loss, you've got these stop loss anomalies.
Right.
And yet we hire 80 people in the last 2 years? I don't understand, and I know you're not directly responsible for that, George. I'm not taking this out on you personally.
Right.
I'm just saying
I
that
understand that.
there's, you know, I mean, like, you know, the taxpayers are the ones who are paying all this. This isn't, if we're all gonna pass the hat around the room, we're gonna fund it, okay, let's do it.
Right.
But this is, you know, the budget is being paid by the taxpayers, and to me, you know, the way that we're spending right now, we can, you know, it's just not, I'm not comfortable with it whatsoever. We're way above our peers in terms of spending. You know, tax bills have not gone down. I mean, I hear it all day long, over in my neighborhood, and you're over on my side of the, if you tell me that you haven't heard anybody complaining about taxes, I'd be shocked. I mean, I have people tell me all the time that their tax bills, they can't sustain it anymore. $1,000 a year, $1,500 a year. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And so I'm offering one cut. I'm not going deep into the budget, which, quite honestly, I mean, not that I'd have the support here, but I could. I mean, I could go in, and there's a lot of areas, I think, but the bottom line is, this is one cut that I'm proposing that I think could be funded from other sources right now, that we don't need to, I know that the financial markets, they want, they look at us very closely, and they look at our overlay account and all this stuff, but yet we're going into the overlay account for $1 million a year for the, so, I mean, I don't see how cutting $600,000 out of a self-funded group health plan, it's just $600,000 less that our taxpayers have to come up with. And, I would recommend that it come out of free cash, but
Well, I gotta be honest with
I'm
you.
one vote. I'm one vote here, so everybody can vote how they see fit. I sat through these hearings. I've heard this argument for the last 15 years about group health insurance, and I know we have the doomsday mentality, as if the city's going to sink a $217 million budget on a $640,000 cut.
Well, I'm not going to say the city's going to
cut.
sink on that. What I am saying is, and facing an prudent mind, is that in a prudent decision, based on what we're looking at, and based on that our trust fund right now is just at the 2.5%, 2.5 months of claims. And that's what the DOR requires, that's what the financial markets require. When I did this budget and I put it together and looked at it and talked to our consultants numerous times, I even asked them ways that we could cut this down in any fashion. And then if you cut it this year, you're going to have to cut it. It's going to be made up next year even more. So if you cut $600,000 next year and the rates go up a certain amount, it's going to go based on what the rates are now. So you may go up $600,000 now. It's down, take out $600,000 now, but you maybe have to put in $1 million in next year. So that's the only, my sort of like putting the caution out there is what I'm doing here. And I'm saying that with in a fashion so that you understand that the city is not, especially in this health insurance, is not it's not a money-making proposition, that's for sure. But the other part of it too is it definitely needs to be funded fully, because at the same time, Blue Cross Blue Shield has to know, hey, we got the money in there. Because if we start dipping into that 2.5 months worth of claims, I'm going to be coming up here and saying, you know what, we need more money.
Well, George, if we keep fanning the flames, let's hire another 20, 30 people this year. Let's keep adding to the health insurance pool. Let's keep doing it. I mean, I just, where does it end? Where does it end?
Well, based on what we
Where
have,
does it end? I mean, like, I've got to go, I have to leave this building and go out and talk to the people out there that aren't happy. They're not happy with their tax rates. They're not happy. I mean, there's 1,000,001 things that people have concerns and complaints about. I mean, like, I just talking facts. Like, these are facts. Like, the health insurance going up 8.8% this year? For
It
what,
did- It did go up, again, because our experience rates were high, and that's all I can say.
Oh.
And I continue to say our experience rates were high. I can't show you the experiences because that's part of the HIPAA laws, but I can say the consultants that we've hired and been our consultants for 20-something years, and their estimates are right on the money. They use, and they have been, they have told us that this is the amount of money that we need, based on the experience rate.
Well, they gave us a bum deal on the stop loss that didn't go through. I don't know how that could possibly happen. We have a stop loss insurance policy so that we don't have to pay those claims that go above $250,000.
Well, we
I don't know,
we had to
but
put it back, every year we put that back out for request. And again, that's what's put out this year for request. And although they covered it last year because they had to, this year they saw that and they decided everybody that bid lays those claims. Everybody that bid lays those claims. So that's all I can say. I just warned the council about that. And this is what you're dealing with, and you're dealing with people's health insurance.
All right, thank you, George. Madam Clerk, there's one potential cut, if you want to call the
Chairman, I'd
roll.
like to speak.
Go ahead.
Chief Guido, Chairman, Insurance Advisory Committee. I would implore that the council don't make this cut. The rates are already set. The employees' rates are set off of the whole rate, and this will...
This would lower their rate.
Right, it'll lower our rate, but we'll be putting the money back later. We had
I
a
don't think
premium
so.
holiday last year, we probably shouldn't have, and now we're paying now. The employees' rates went up, the city's rates went up, and I agree with the new auditor, going forward, instead of having a premium holiday, we should leave the money in the trust fund so we can lower the rates in the future.
I
But
suggest we take free cash and lower the employees' rates.
I know for 25 years I've been doing the insurance.
And it's
There's a
been going up
union,
dramatically.
And Cook and Company's been on the money all the time, and I don't suggest the council cut the medical. It's basically a charade. We'll be putting the money back. And if we use free cash, next year's amount will go up double. The amount of the free cash, so we'd be
Well, I don't know why it's
raising the
going up
money
at that
twice.
dramatic of a rate.
So if we need to cut 500,000, there's plenty of other places in the budget to make cuts, and it shouldn't come out of the health insurance.
I
Thank you.
think the employees would appreciate a reduction in their health insurance rates.
If it was a true reduction, but
It is a
we
true
know we need the
reduction.
money in the health fund, so I disagree.
We can, okay, good.
Can I speak? Yeah, I'm also on the advisory board for the health insurance, and I agree with Chief Guido that I don't think we should touch it. It's too dangerous.
Okay, Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, that's the one cut apparently that we're talking about.
So this would be a $600,000 reduction on the employee group health line. Counselor Janino?
No.
No. Counselor McKenna?
No.
No. Counselor Morbido?
No.
No. Counselor Patch is absent. Counselor Zambudo?
No.
No. Counselor Guanasso?
No.
No. And Chairman Rizzo?
Yes.
Yes, that reduction request fails.
This will conclude our Ways and Means Subcommittee meeting. I want to thank everybody for their participation. So we'll take a vote on it right now then, and then we'll do it in subcommittee, and then we'll put it out to the whole council? Okay. Go ahead. You can call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Shall the City Council adopt and approve, so the Ways and Means Committee, shall they issue a recommendation for the fiscal year 2020 budget in the sum of $203,390,333? And that's as presented by the mayor. Counselor Janino?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor McKenna?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Morbido?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Patch is absent. Counselor Zambudo?
Yes.
Yes. Counselor Guanasso?
Yes.
Yes. And Chairman Rizzo?
No.
No. This will be, the FY 2020 budget will be forwarded to the full City Council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you all for your attendance, and we will report out all of these matters before the City Council this evening. This concludes our Ways and Means Subcommittee meeting.